When we first pulled into the driveway, the house looked like something out of a dream. A 2-story suburban house with a wraparound porch, perfect for a family of 4. My husband Mark and I had saved for years to buy our first home, and this one was perfect. Our daughters, Lily 8 and Kate 12, were excited. It wasn't long before we made it our home in a safe haven. It was great here. Quiet neighborhood, friendly neighbors. Life seemed perfect until about 3 months in. It started out small. I would hear Lily upstairs giggling and talking with someone, and when I'd peek into her room to see who she was talking to, she'd be laying in bed, no one else in sight. "Who are you talking to, sweetie?" I would ask. She'd always just shrug her shoulders and say, "No one, Mommy." At first, I would brush it off, but after a while, it just got weird. One afternoon, I was grabbing some groceries out of the car when Lily walks by me towards the end of the driveway. "Lily, where are you going? Can you help me, please?" I called out as I ducked into the car to grab a bag. But when I turned to look back, she just stands there, her back to me. "Lily?" I call out again, but nothing. A bit annoyed, I carry the bags inside, and just as I step through the door, there she is, sitting at the table with Mark, eating a cookie. I blink a few times and look back at the driveway and then at Lily at the table. "Baby, weren't you just outside?" I asked, my voice shakier than intended. She looks at me confused. "No, I've been here with Dad." Mark gives me a quizzical look. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lie, forcing a smile. "I'm just seeing things." Over the next few weeks, these types of things happened frequently, and Mark started noticing them too. One time, he went downstairs in the middle of the night to grab some water and saw Lily standing outside on the patio looking in. He walked over and slid the door open. "Lily, what are you doing outside, honey? It's chilly," he asked. "Can I come in?" "I'm cold," Lily asked in a small voice. "Of course, honey. Come here," Mark says as he sweeps Lily in his arms and carries her in. He carries her upstairs and stops dead in his tracks when he sees Lily sound asleep in her bed. His eyes widen as he looks at who he was carrying and comes face to face with Lily herself. But there's something horribly wrong with her eyes. Her eyes are black as coal. Mark screams and the girl vanishes into thin air, leaving him standing there shaking and unable to speak. I come out of the room to see what the commotion is about. "Mark, honey, what's wrong? Why are you screaming?" I ask, trying to calm him down. But all he can do is shake his head and whisper to himself, "What was that? What the hell was that?" My blood runs cold as I hear a faint laugh from somewhere in the house, but there's nothing there. After what happened last night, we knew something was wrong. There was a growing sense of unease that our once peaceful home was no longer peaceful. We decided to keep a close watch on Lily, though we never told her what happened. She was still her cheerful, playful self, and we didn't want to scare her. But every moment spent with her felt like we were walking on eggshells. Was it really her? Or was it whatever that thing was that took her form that night? I started watching her in the mirror whenever I brushed her hair in the mornings, or I tried to sneak a glance into any reflective surface whenever she stood by one, looking for any feint of the dark-eyed girl that Mark saw that night. But no matter how closely I watched, I saw nothing unusual. The entity must have known we were onto it because that's when the activity began. One morning, I came downstairs to start breakfast when I saw all the chairs in the dining room stacked on the table, like in that one movie. At first, I thought Mark had played a sick prank and yelled at him to come down now. "Did you do this?" I asked. He shakes his head as he looks at the chairs with wide eyes. I then remembered he installed cameras around the house after that night with the entity and asked if we should check the footage. When he pulls it up, we see the chairs had simply shifted out of frame and stacked themselves while the rest of the room stayed still. We didn't know what to think. Then there were the noises. Faint tapping heard coming from somewhere in the house which we could never pinpoint. Footsteps at night when we were all accounted for. Once, Mark heard giggling in the bathroom when he was showering, but when he pulls the curtain back, nothing. The worst came a few days later. I was folding laundry in the basement when out of nowhere, Lily's baby monitor crackles on. It was laying in a box in the storage room. A chill ran up my spine because we haven't used it since Lily was a baby, and I know there was no batteries in it. "Mommy, can you come help me? My stomach drops. The girls are at school. There is no one home but me. Lily? I say out loud. The voice repeats, this time with a strange echo and a sinister laugh. I drop the towel I was holding and bolt upstairs. I had to get out of there. The atmosphere at home turned from uneasy to oppressive. Every sound, every shadow felt evil. Mark and I tried to keep up appearances for Lily and Cade, but our nerves were wearing thin. And then, as if the entity sensed our breaking point, things escalated. One afternoon, while I worked in my home office, the computer screen flickers and then goes black. When it comes back on, a single sentence was typed into the document. You can't hide from me. I stared at the words. The office was silent. Not even the sounds from outside come in. I spin around in my chair and look into the mirror that stands just behind my desk, and there she is, standing right in front of my desk, staring at me with those black eyes. I whip around, but she's gone. My heart races as I call Mark, desperate to hear his voice. The activity had become relentless, but now it was clear Lily was the target. Mark and I barely slept anymore, taking turns keeping watch over her room. But it didn't matter. That thing always found a way in. One night we heard soft singing from Lily's room. A lullaby. Mark and I froze and looked at each other before rushing into her room. The song wasn't one I'd ever heard before, and the voice, it wasn't hers. When we got there, Lily was sitting up in her bed, staring at the far corner of her room. Her lips were moving, singing the words of the lullaby, but the voice did not match hers. It was older, raspier, like someone who hasn't spoken in years. Lily? I whisper. Lily turns to us and with emotionless eyes says, She's here. Mark scoops Lily up as I scan the room, my heart pounding. There was nothing there, but the air feels heavy. Then the temperature drops. Out, I say, pushing them out the door. But before we leave, Lily's mirror above her dresser cracks. I scream and shut the door. That night we slept in our room with the girls, and when I come out in the morning, there was a series of small footprints in the hallway coming out of Lily's room. They weren't hers. These were blackened, as if they were burned into the wood. The subtle signs of the entity's control over Lily was becoming harder to ignore. One night, as we sat at the kitchen table eating dinner, Lily sat silently at the table, moving her fork around her plate. Lily, what's wrong, love? I asked. Lily tilts her head slightly as she looks at the corner of the room. She doesn't like you, she says, her voice flat. Who doesn't like me, baby? I ask again, cautiously. Lily looks back at her plate, her expression looking far older for an 8-year-old. No one, she says sweetly, with a smile on her face as she starts eating as if nothing had happened. Mark looks at me with a worried look, but says nothing. We continue with dinner in silence, not wanting to push further. Later that night, Mark hears a sound coming from downstairs. When we go down to investigate, we see Lily standing at the front door, her hand resting on the doorknob. Mark gently picks her up and we take her back to bed. Lily has never sleepwalked before, and this was alarming. When I asked her the following morning what she was doing by the front door, Lily didn't remember anything. I simply told her that I must have dreamt it and looked away. What I didn't see was the sly grin that came across Lily's face as her eyes briefly turned black, then back again. One night, after going for drinks with some friends, I get home late and notice that something is off. The air feels icy, as if the windows were left open in the dead of winter. I call out, Mark? Girls? Is anybody here? Nothing, just silence. I close my eyes and take a deep breath while trying to shake the creepiness off and start going up the stairs. At the top of the stairs, I see Lily there, standing square with me, staring me down. Her face, expressionless, and her eyes look blacker than black. Lily? Baby? I ask nervously. She doesn't respond, just stares with no expression. As I step closer, the faint outline of another figure seems to flicker behind her, almost mirroring her, and when I blink, it's gone. Lily ragdolls onto the floor as if she was a puppet whose strings were just cut. The change was subtle at first. but Lily was no longer herself. Her once bright personality had been replaced by a quiet, unnerving demeanor. When she spoke, her voice seemed heavier, her words more deliberate, and her smile, when it appeared, felt wrong, like it didn't belong to her face. I would be sitting in the living room and I would hear a faint giggle. When I looked at Lily, she would be sitting there watching TV silently. One morning, I came downstairs and the kitchen looked like a hurricane went through it. Cabinets broken, flour all over the counter, the faucet on full blast and the ceiling fan rocking back and forth. Lily sat at the table coloring, with an unsettling calm on her face as if this was normal. "Lily, baby, what happened here?" I asked, looking around the room. "It wasn't me. She did it," she says as her lips curl into an eerie grin. "Who's she, baby?" I ask almost breathlessly. "The other Lily," and looks at me with a serious expression. My breath catches and I swallow hard. "Oh, okay," I say as I start cleaning up. When I turn my back, I catch a glimpse in the toaster as Lily turns, and for a moment, her eyes turn black before turning back to normal. I freeze and fight from screaming out. I just turn and leave the room. Later that night, as Mark sits at the table finishing up a report for work, the TV turns on full blast, blaring static. He jumps before walking over and grabbing the remote to shut it off. As it shuts off, the lights flicker and the room plunges into darkness. When they come back on, Lily is standing in the doorway. "Why are you mad, Daddy?" she says, her voice small but laced with something unsettling. Mark looks at her and goosebumps form on his arms as he says, "I'm not mad, sweetie. Did you turn the TV on?" Lily doesn't answer. She just stares, her gaze intense before turning and walking back to her room without a word. Later that night, we wake up to the fire alarm blaring. We run down to the kitchen and find all the burners on the stove turned to high, the flames licking the air. Lily stands in front of the stove holding her stuffed animal, watching the flames with an unsettling calm. Mark grabs her shoulders. "Lily, what's going on?" he screams. "She's just having fun," Lily whispers, her lips curling into a smirk. And then, for the first time, we see it, her eyes. For a brief moment, they weren't Lily's anymore. They were pitch black, endless voids that seemed to pull all the warmth from the room. I scream and fall backward, but when I blink again, her eyes were normal, wide with fake innocence. "What's wrong, Mommy?" she asks sweetly. I shake my head and start turning the stove off and opening windows to get the smoke out. Mark stands there looking at Lily as she calmly walks out of the room. We both look at each other in disbelief. Kate whimpers from the corner. "She's possessed, isn't she?" Mark opens his arms and Kate runs into them. "I don't know, baby girl," he says as he holds her. "I don't know." The next night, I'm in the kitchen cutting vegetables for dinner when the air suddenly becomes cold. The knife slips from my hand onto the floor, and when I bend to pick it up, it turns sharply and cuts my hand. I scream from the pain, and when I look up, Lily is standing in the doorway staring at me with no expression on her face, just a stare that leaves me wanting to crawl and hide somewhere. Then, without a word, she turns and walks away. The final straw was when I was taking a break from work. I sit back in my chair and close my eyes to take a deep, relaxing breath. I never noticed the door opening behind me, or the faint creak on the floorboards, but what I do feel is hands. Small, icy hands pressing against my throat. I jump out of the chair, grabbing my throat, and there, sitting on the chair opposite my desk, is Lily, watching me with an unnerving, calm expression. "Are you okay, Mommy?" she asked, tilting her head, no expression on her face. I couldn't speak. Her stare pins me in place, and for a split second her eyes darken again, two pools of black before turning back to normal. The room spins, and then nothing. I awake in bed with Mark standing over me. "Baby, talk to me," I hear him say. I look at him and smile before sitting up, but then the memory of what happened comes flooding back and I start to shake as I tell him. He holds me close and whispers, "I got you. We'll figure this out." Later that night, as I'm walking to my room, I hear Lily singing softly in her room. The door closed. Curious, I approach slowly to her door and listen in. "I know you're there, Mommy," I hear her say, but her voice sounds inhuman. My hand flies to my mouth to stifle a scream, and I run to my bedroom and close the door. Mark looks up from the bed. "Julie, what's wrong?" I heard Lily singing in her room, and when I pressed my ear to the door to listen, I swallow hard before continuing. "Mark, the door was closed. She knew I was there listening, but that was not her voice," I say, close to tears. "That's not Lily anymore," I say. "Mark, we need to do something." Mark shifts in bed, his face pale. The dark circles around his eyes look deeper than ever. "I know. But what?" he says. "Who do we call for something like this? The police? A doctor? They'd think we lost our damn minds and have the girls taken away." I shake my head. "This is beyond any doctor, Mark. Whatever this thing is, it's not of this world. It's like we're in a freaking movie. No, we need someone who can fight it on another level." Mark's jaw tightens. "You mean a priest?" "Do you have a better idea?" I snap back. "Every night it's worse. Kate's already afraid to sleep in her room. Mark, if we don't do something, we'll lose her." Mark leans back against the headboard. I don't even know where to start. We're not exactly church regulars. I look over at Mark. "Look, I talked with a coworker over what's been going on, and she said her church has dealt with this situation before. She gave me the number to the priest that was involved. I didn't think we needed, but now..." Mark looks at the piece of paper I handed him. He reads the name out. Father Matthews. The name felt both foreign, yet oddly comforting. "Give me the phone," Mark says, reaching out. I give him the phone and he dials. The line rings a few times before a calm, steady voice answers. "This is Father Matthews." "Father, I'm sorry to call so late, but I need your help. It's my daughter. There's something wrong with her, and I don't think it's something natural." There was a long pause on the other end, long enough for Mark to almost hang up. But then, "I'll come tomorrow," Father Matthews says in a serious tone. "Tell me everything when I get there." The next morning brought a strange mix of hope and dread. As the sun rose, its light felt dimmer, struggling to pierce through the thick veil of unease that cloaked the house. Lily sat quietly at the breakfast table. She didn't speak or eat, only watched her family with that faint, unsettling smile. Father Matthews arrived just before sunset, dressed in a simple black suit and clerical collar. He steps outside of his car carrying a small bag, his gaze looking around the house's exterior as if he could see the house's aura and the darkness it bring. I met him at the doorway. "Thank you for coming, Father," I say with a slight tremble to my voice. He gives me a reassuring smile. "Let's see what we're dealing with, Julie," he says softly. "Let's find some answers." We go inside and Father Matthews looks around. His eyes land on Lily, sitting calmly on the sofa, holding a stuffed bear, her face expressionless. But those eyes were unnerving in their darkness as she follows his every move. "Hello, Lily," Father Matthews says as he slowly approaches her. Lily tilts her head slightly as she studies him. "Hello, Father," she says in a voice that wasn't quite her own. The way she said his title made the hairs on the back of his neck stand. It wasn't fear he felt. No, it was something colder, something that screamed of evil. "Do you know why I'm here?" he asks. A faint smile forms on Lily's face as she says, "You've come to try to save the girl." Her words were like a challenge, and Father Matthews felt as though he was in the presence of something far older than the child sitting in front of him. "I'm here to help you find your way," he says, his voice calm. "Help?" Lily repeats with an eerie smile forming on her face. "I don't need your help, Father, but you might." The temperature in the room dropped and a cold chill settles over Father Matthews. He turns to us and says, "I'd like to bless the house. I need to establish a spiritual boundary." Mark nods in agreement. The atmosphere shifts with every drop of water he sprinkles, and each incantation seems to push back an unseen presence that lurks in the shadows. When he enters Lily's room, he pauses. The room felt colder than the rest of the house, and the air had a faint, pungent smell. He scans the room as he steps inside. Lily's toys lay scattered about, their bright colors seeming out of place with the rest of the dark space. He begins his blessing, his voice firm, steady, despite the uneasiness building in his chest. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I cleanse this room of all that is unholy. The air in the room shifts, as if retreating ever so slightly as the prayers continue. He sprinkles water over the bed, the walls, and the windowsill. But just as he walks towards the door, it slams shut with a deafening sound. Father Matthew stands there, the sound of his beating heart hammering in his ears. He reaches for the doorknob, but it doesn't move. "Lily?" he says, his voice firm. On the other side, he hears a childlike giggle, but distorted. "Lily, open the door," he says again, struggling to keep his voice firm. The giggling stops abruptly and is replaced with a low, guttural whisper. "She's not here, you fool. She's mine now." With his pulse thundering in his ears, he clutches the crucifix around his neck and raises it towards the door, and in a loud, strong voice says, "In the name of the Father, release this child." The room fills with a deafening scream, followed by the sound of wood splintering and unseen nails dragging against the walls. Shadows swirl violently, forming into a vaguely human form that looms over him for an instant before disappearing. The door suddenly flies open, and Father Matthews stumbles out, sweat beading down his face and gasping for air. As he leans on the wall trying to catch his breath, he looks over, and there standing just in front of him was Lily, her expression blank. "Are you okay, Father?" she asks sweetly, tilting her head with fake innocence. I rush to Father Matthews, but he holds up a trembling hand to stop me. "I'm fine," he says, though his voice betrays him. His eyes lock on Lily, and with that sickly smile on her face, she turns and walks down the stairs and out of sight. Later on, Father Matthews sits at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped tightly around a cup of hot coffee. Mark and I sit across from him, all of us exhausted over what happened. Each of us has a clear view of Lily playing quietly in the living room, her humming sending chills over us. "Whatever this is, it has a strong hold on your daughter. It's not leaving willingly," he begins with a steady but grave voice. "What can we do?" Mark says, his voice barely a whisper. Father Matthews takes a deep breath before saying, "A house cleansing. It's a more aggressive approach to rid the space of evil. It will provoke whatever is here, so it's vital that we stay strong and united." Mark and I exchange glances before nodding our agreement. I won't deny how scared I am at this point, but all I can do now is hope for the best. As soon as dusk came around, we all sat in the living room holding the candles we were given by Father Matthews as he stands in the center, with his Bible in one hand, a thurible in the other. The thurible released its fragrant smoke as it swung gently from its chains. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit," Father Matthews begins, his voice echoing throughout the house. "I command all unholy presences to leave this house. This is a house of light, and you are not welcomed." The air shifts almost immediately. A low groan is heard coming from all around them, as if coming right from the walls. The lights flicker violently, throwing the occupants into moments of strobe-like chaos. Shadows stretch unnaturally over the walls like living things. "Stay together," Father Matthews orders, his voice firm despite the growing tension. He moves from room to room, sprinkling holy water and reciting prayers. In the kitchen, plates fly off the counter and shatter against the walls, barely missing Mark's head. "Get out!" a guttural voice bellows from nowhere and everywhere at once, shaking the house. Mark grabs Kate and holds her close as she starts crying. "Keep going, Father," he says as Father Matthews looks at him. Father Matthews presses forward. When we enter Lily's room, the temperature drops out. We see our breath coming out in visible clouds as we step inside. I give an involuntary scream when the bed rises a few inches off the floor and slams back down with a force that rattles the foundation. Lily stands in the doorway, watching silently, her dark eyes glinting in the dim light and with a smirk tugging at her lips. "Leave her alone," Father Matthews commands, holding up the crucifix. "You have no power here." The entity responds with fury. Books fly off the shelf, toys hurtle themselves across the room, and the curtains rip off their rods. Father Matthews barely ducks in time as a chair goes hurtling past him, smashing into the wall behind him. Suddenly, Lily's feet lift off the ground. Her body arches unnaturally as she hangs in midair, her mouth open in a silent scream. "Let her go," I yell, pleading with the entity to put her down. Mark holds me back. "Baby, don't. We can't risk it hurting her," he whispers in my ear. I close my eyes and let the tears run down. Father Matthews steps closer, his voice rising above the chaos. "In the name of Jesus Christ, I command you to release this child." Lily's body convulses violently before being dropped to the floor with a thud. All at once, the house falls silent. Nothing but the sound of everyone breathing hard. Mark and I rush to Lily's side, and as we help her up, her eyes shoot open, and with a voice that is not of this world, she says, "You can't save her. She's already mine." And with that, the air starts swirling again, this time with more fierce than before, the deafening roar of it the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane. Father Matthews raises his crucifix and begins incantations of which cannot be heard above the roar. Objects fly around the room, crashing into the walls. Windows shatter, and Lily is once again lifted into midair and held above their heads. Father Matthews struggles to come near her while continuing his incantations, and as he nears and touches her leg with the crucifix, there's a loud explosion as both Father Matthews and Lily are thrown in opposite directions, hitting the wall with a sickening thud. The room reaches what can only be explained as a climax of activity, when just like that, it stops. All at once, silence. All activity stops, and the only sound is that of everyone breathing, and Kate crying softly in the corner. Father Matthews and Lily lay motionless where they fell, and for a moment, I start to think that they may be. "No, no," I say as I rush to Lily's side. "Baby, baby, open your eyes. Baby, please, please," I plead with her. I looked over at Mark, who rushed over to Father Matthews. He gives me a nod, indicating that he is okay. "Mommy?" I hear Lily say, and when I look at her, I see my beautiful little girl again. Her eyes are back to normal, and she's back. I hug her so tightly as I whisper how much I loved her. I looked around the room and can't believe the devastation of what just took place, but I am happy that my little girl is back, safe and sound. For the next few days, the house was basically back to normal. Normal whispers, shadows, just a calmness that was a welcome feeling. Father Matthews continued to check in, saying that the entity was not as strong as he had believed it, so it was a blessing that he was able to get rid of it in one go. Normally, those cleansings take days. I was oddly happy that was not the fact. I do not think that we could have handled any more than what we did. Lily seemed to return to normal. Her smile and joyous laughter once again filled the house, and I couldn't be happier. Later that night, as I tucked Lily into bed, I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Good night, my sweet angel," I whisper as I kiss her forehead. Lily's eyes flutter closed as she turns to her side. I get up and turn to leave, and as my hand reaches for the door, I freeze as I hear a familiar whisper in the dark. "Good night, Mother." Hey guys, thanks for tuning into today's story. The urban legend of the black-eyed children is one that has been around for a long time. Countless encounters have been told. But what if it's all true? What if these eerie children are not just a story, but something more? Are they a figment of our collective imagination? Or maybe the question isn't whether or not they are real, but whether we will ever know. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.